our recovery. For DCPS, we will use these dollars in part to ensure that every school will remain whole for the upcoming school year, and the Chancellor will go into more detail about that work. I'm also pleased to make another announcement that will encourage, we hope, more stability in our substitute teaching ranks. We will propose to deliver another pay increase for our DCPS substitutes to make them among the highest paid public school substitutes in the region. So up to $20 per hour for a regular daily substitute and $25 an hour for a long-term substitute who will teach for at least 30 consecutive days in our classrooms. So we hear our substitutes, we hear their concerns, and frankly, I couldn't agree more, and that is why we're seeking to make an additional investment. So as we finish the school year strong, we'll have some updates about our summer programming next month, and I want to remind our elementary and middle school families that they have one more month to submit their lottery applications for next school year. And if you're a returning DCPS family, we're asking everybody to remember to re-enroll. So with that, I want to turn over to Chancellor Louis Farabee, and he will be followed by Dr. Barbara Basron.
Good morning. Thank you, Muriel Bowser, for your leadership and your commitment to our students across the city. As many of you know, DCPS is proudly one of the fastest progressing urban school districts in the nation. And our progress has been fueled by these significant and historic investments in our public school system. And Mayor, we're proud to lead the renaissance. We know that we have more work to do, and this budget supports the continued progress that will happen in our schools. What I want the DCPS families and community to know clearly, most importantly, is that we recognize the impact of operating schools in a pandemic. We also recognize that our students and families need more of us as we welcome our students back on our campus this school year. We believe that this budget provides the opportunities for us to do that. We will continue all our health and safety protocols, but ensure that we accelerate learning and also provide the needed academic, social, and emotional supports for our students. I also want our school communities to clearly understand what this budget allows us to do. We have within this budget, as Mayor Bowser described, a one-time allocation of funding to ensure stability in our schools year over year. And what that means for DCPS local school advisory teams, as you plan for your budgeting process this school year, you will begin with a budget that is no less than what was submitted to the council as a part of the mayor's budget last year. So that will be your starting point. In addition to that, as the mayor described, we will have additional one-time funding through the mayor's recovery funding. This will allow us to maximize school buying power as well, something we also hear from our local school advisory team. So we're excited that families and communities will have an opportunity to go to our website. They can go to the DCPS budget website and gather information and start the planning process. We will also share with our school leaders the timeline in which local school advisory teams will submit their budgets. This, again, will be their initial budgets, and then once those budgets are finalized, will be a part of the mayor's submission to council. We also are embedded in this process an updated model that represents significant feedback from our school communities in an effort to ensure that we're more transparent, our budget is easier to follow, and we continue to uplift our principles of equity and stability. And you will see that represented in our budget. And there's three factors that are considered as schools will receive their budgets to ensure that regardless of the school type, the enrollment, that they have the appropriate resources to meet student and family need. And those three factors are: one, we consider enrollment. And then we have what we call our targeted supports. Those are resources that we know are critical for those students who need more from us at this time. And then finally, stability, ensuring that year over year, especially in a time we know that our school communities need more of us, there's stability with personnel and non-personnel resources. So we're excited about where we are. We know that there's more to do. Our school leaders are working hard to ensure that this is a strong second semester this school year. We continue to uplift our health and safety protocols. And thanks to school leaders like Maria Takeva, across the district, we've stepped up and been able to deliver on significant resources, and we're planning to do so over the summer and going into next school year. This is a budget that puts us forward in a position where we can not only meet student need, but ensure that our schools have the stability they need year over year in resources. Now, speaking of resources, we also know, as we started this conversation, that there are mental health supports needed, and we have a phenomenal partnership with DBH. So it's my pleasure at this time to turn the floor over to Dr. Bazaran. Thank you, Dr. Bazaran.
Thank you, Chancellor Farabee. I want to also thank Mayor Bowser for her commitment to ensuring that every student and family in DC public schools and public charter schools have the access to the mental health services they need. The DBH School-Based Behavioral Health Program offers mental health services to students and families to reduce behavioral health-related barriers to learning. Studies show that half of all lifetime mental health disorders start by the age of 14. And school-based services have proven to be an effective way to reach children, youth, and their families. DBH brings services directly to children and youth within the environment where they spend most of their time, the school. Good mental health is essential to a child's development and ability to succeed in life, now and later, to do well in school or on a job, have good relations with their families, and get along in the community. Mayor Bowser has invested $27 million in school-based behavioral health service, fulfilling her commitment to make a clinician available to every child in every school. DBH-supported clinicians coordinate services with the public school personnel that could include a behavioral health coordinator, social workers, and psychologists. Using the public health approach, 3 levels of service are available in schools. The first is prevention. All students receive these services. The goal is to create a positive school climate that reinforces positive behavior supports and supports resilience and recovery and reduces the stigma related to mental illness. Examples are anti-bullying workshops or anger management sessions. The second is intervention. These services and supports are for children and youth, estimated to be 10 to 15% of the school population who are at elevated risk for developing a mental health problem due to social or emotional challenges, behavioral symptoms, trauma, or emotional needs that may not yet be severe enough to meet the diagnostic criteria. And also, we provide treatment. These services are for students estimated to be 1 to 5% who meet diagnostic criteria for social emotional disturbances. Today, DBH supported clinicians are in 155 schools with the goal of expanding to all schools during school year 21-22. School-based services like the ones provided here at CHEC are part of the Department of Behavioral Health's comprehensive children's system of care that focuses on prevention, early intervention, and treatment. And there are an array of treatment practices that prove to be effective that improve a child's daily functioning here at school, at home, or in the community. Our goal is to prevent the onset of mental health issues and to identify children who are at risk of mental health and or substance use disorders earlier and connect them to appropriate services as soon as possible. School-based behavioral health services are an effective way to support children and families across the district, which is why Mayor Bowser has made the multi-year commitment to ensure these services are available in every public and public charter school. We consistently see firsthand how these critical investments in our children and their families are empowering DC schools and meeting the behavioral health needs of the children who attend them. This support comes as a part of a broader commitment to invest in the behavioral health of all DC residents. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'm going to invite my team to come up and out with questions. Questions? Yes.
Oh, thank you. So what is the per pupil funding with the new investments?
The actual number? Is
Yeah, per student.
What does that number turn out to be? The number per pupil? The question is per pupil.
Per pupil? I don't believe we have the DCPS per pupil number.
Got it. Okay.
Hey, I have a couple of questions. One being this, you mentioned stabilization funds. This is, at least the third or fourth year in a row that either through the mayor's office or through the council, there has been stabilization funds from what I imagine is lower enrollment, but also at the same time, each year we're adding new charter schools and adding new grade levels to charter schools. So my question is do you, Chancellor Farabee or Dr. Walker, do you believe that this is sustainable, and how many more years do you anticipate needing to add extra funds because there's, not enough students at schools to have a full comprehensive staffing model?
That's a great question, and certainly we see this as an anomalous year in some ways, or a couple of years, given the impacts of the pandemic. So, Paul, do you want to just kind of address our thinking moving, and especially as it relates to the recovery fund?
Yeah, thanks, Perry, for the question. Something we're watching very closely. And as you know, overall, in the first full year of the pandemic, we saw a slight decline in public school enrollment. This current school year, we actually saw that stabilize. So we didn't lose additional students. And as we look at applications, for example, into My School DC Lottery, we are now seeing a slight uptick. Where we lost students in general in the system, typically were in the very lower grades. So our pre-K student enrollment was down overall, and our elementary enrollment was down overall. These are areas that we anticipate as we move through the pandemic that we expect our public school population to tick back up and increase. So we actually are looking at the kind of historic investment we're making now as a stabilization investment to ensure the students who are in schools have exactly what they need in order to thrive and recover. And we anticipate that public school enrollment will continue to increase as we had seen in years prior to the pandemic.
The need for stabilization funds?
So in law, we have a stabilization law for DC public schools that says no school can receive less than 95% of their prior school year's budget. The challenge with thinking about this in terms of so-called stabilization is, as you know, things next year will cost more than they cost this year, which is why we have to think about what the cost will be next year. And the Chancellor alluded to this in his remarks. So again, overall, we believe with this budget, we are delivering to schools, district and charter, what they will need to continue their recovery. And the mayor has included this recovery fund, which is a dramatic additional round of funding to actually ensure that as we need health and safety protocols, as we need additional supports for learning, and those kinds of things, schools will have that as well. This is all done on the assumption that as a city, we are recovering. And as a city, our population will come back, and we will see growth in our public school population again, as we'd seen in the decade coming up to the pandemic.
Yes.
Hi, Mayor. Could you talk a bit about what made this funding increase possible? Sort of trying to get a sense of, during the pandemic, we've seen lots of infusion of federal monies and other funding, sources that city governments have gotten. Has that helped at all to make possible an increase like this? I'm just trying to get a sense of.
Well, certainly, federal infusion of dollars has helped the public education with ESSER grants. We've had federal funding that has allowed us to support our health and safety protocols. So throughout the pandemic, that has certainly been helpful. But what is allowing us to make this type of investment? Who are our DC taxpayers? And also the very careful way that we have managed our government and our expenditures. So we're making a very significant investment locally. Anything to add to that one? You want to add? Okay.
Chancellor Farabee, with these additional investments, can you guarantee that schools won't have to lose staff if, for example, the cost of paying them goes up? Will you be able to keep staffing levels and positions the same?
Great question. I'm glad you asked that question, because year over year there's always this question of, will we have the same resources and staff? The answer is typically not, and the reason being is our local schools advisory teams and our school leaders make adjustments. They make adjustments based on the needs in their school community, and they're responsive. What we are addressing, more importantly though, is this idea that you alluded to, that there are inflationary increases to personnel costs, and there are inflationary increases to non-personnel costs. And so what the Mayor's Recovery Fund allows schools to do is have additional resources to maximize their buying power. So think of this budget in two ways. One, with stability, ensuring that you have the resources that were a part of your budget that was submitted last year. In addition to that, the recovery dollars that the mayor has also provided to help maximize school buying power.
Yes.
Yeah, Chancellor Farabee, last year at this equivalent announcement, last February, you announced that you guys were going to be putting big investments into ensuring that I think it was 10% of students would receive close to one-on-one or small group tutoring, and a third of students would receive tutoring. Has that happened? Has 10% of students received that small group tutoring, and has that happened?
Yes, thank you, Perry, for that question. So the acceleration efforts that you described have been underway this school year. We know that will be an ongoing and fluid process. That 10% of student population will change throughout the year as student needs change. As we did last summer, we will target those students based on our multi-tier system of support. So some students, for example, may receive small group instruction, but then some students may need one-on-one instruction as well. That's happening during the school day. It's happening outside of the school day. So for example, we have some schools that have before and after school academies that provide that support. And then we also have a number of schools that are also doing that on Saturday. We'll invite students who need that over the summer. And then we're asking schools now to submit their plans for acceleration going into the 22-23 school year, in addition to the budgeting process that has been described today.
Have you spent that full $30 million towards tutorings? Have you
So
been able to hire
some
them?
schools have spent more than others, which is why we're asking schools to share back with us what their plans are. The number of students who need that level of support does vary by school. So we're currently going to evaluate those plans once we receive them, and we're continuing to monitor spending throughout the school year to determine how schools can utilize funds for the summer and next school year.
I'd like to add, if I could.
Sure.
Perry, I just want to also add the following comment, which is, this is where talk of schools budgets gets a little complicated, because there's a distinction between the local school funding and all of the federal money. And you'll recall last year, a lot of what we were talking about was this significant investment of federal dollars into this tutorial support, our high impact tutoring, what we call learning acceleration. So again, this summer, and we'll talk more about this later, we've got over 4,000 students coming to SYEP Earn and Learn programs to get that kind of academic support. We're re-standing up our DPR boost camps. We're investing money in students in charter schools as well as DCPS through this federal recovery dollars, because we understand that this is a time when we have to find students where they are and deliver services that they need on academic recovery. So we're doing that through the federal dollars, not just through the local dollars that the chancellor's talking about.
That you're announcing today is all local dollars.
This is local dollars,
This
yes.
is all local.
The 5.9% UPSFF increase is local funding, which is why the mayor expressed her deep and abiding gratitude to the citizens of Washington, D.C.
Anything else? Yes, sir.
I am a local school advisory team chairperson,
Okay.
so your message has great significance for me, and I'm here at Check, so we're thankful that you chose Check
Thank you.
as the place to unveil the school budget. The chancellor knows me well, the deputy mayor knows me well.
Good.
We've had close conversations. My fundamental question, we had 59 students additional, so we were one of the schools that already saw the enrollment surge.
Good.
We only got enough money for one teacher. That's not good, Mr. Chancellor. One teacher for 59
Have
students?
they gotten their budget?
Yes.
Okay, so
Okay.
I'll let the chancellor, we're not going to talk about the specifics of each
okay.
budget of all the 100 and some schools, but
I can
the
appreciate,
chancellor will.
I can appreciate
And,
that, but when you
hold
look
on.
for other schools to follow our lead in terms of increasing their budget next year and their enrollment, I think you have a perfect example, a live case study. How do you treat us? I think will be a good indicator to the other schools as to whether this means better or worse.
Well, first of all, it's good to see you, and thank you for choosing DCPS mayor. Not only has this gentleman been a parent, he's now a grandparent, and he just loves and supports Columbia Heights Education Campus. So thank you for your many years of dedication, sir, to this school community. And your advocacy. I don't think I can come on this campus without him bending my ear about what's needed here. So I appreciate that. I think when you get into the details of the budget for Columbia Heights Education Campus, I think you'll be very pleased. If not, you reach out to me directly, and I'll be happy to respond.
Thank you. Now, the second part was in terms of the nurse. We have 1,565 students, and we can't seem to get a nurse in person. We should have had two. One got taken away because of what they said was a national nurse shortage, and the second one has been on telework. You can't do telework for 1,500 students on a daily basis. Please, we need some big help.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll look into where your staff is. Not that you don't have the staff assigned here, but they haven't been here in person. Is that your point? Okay, I got it. Yes. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I was hoping to get some clarification on the mental health funding.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking with students, a concern that they often tell me in my reporting is that there's not often enough mental health professionals proportionate to the amount of students in the schools. And oftentimes, in order for students to get help, they have to be diagnosed with something. So how does an increase in funding rectify this?
Let me ask Dr. Bazran to address your very good question.
Thank you for that question. First of all, every student in the school does get prevention services, and you do not have to be diagnosed to get prevention services or early intervention services. However, in terms of treatment services, which are clinically driven services, you do have to have a clinical diagnosis. And you can either get those services from your school-based clinician who is right here in the school building, or from one of our community-based organizations which are in the community, which then expands the network and the opportunities to get treatment. So thank you for that question. I think that to have at least one clinician in every school, that's the start, and we hope to begin to move forward from there.
Yes, Sam?
Just curious on this, I understand you're spending a lot more money on mental health. I mean, how much more are you spending basically, and why?
Well, we have been on a path for several years, and we have an additional multi-year commitment to increase the number of school-based personnel so that there is a clinician at every school. That's why. We were on that path before a pandemic, and I'll say the crisis of mental health that has emerged from it, especially for children. And so our work, while we had started it before the pandemic, it's become more urgent now.
What are you seeing in schools? I mean, you're talking to the kids. What are the issues?
Anxiety, depression, many young people, the isolation of not being in school, not being able to be with their friends, are some of the things. The trauma related to going through the COVID experience. Those are things that we're seeing. Also, in some places, we're also seeing a slight uptick, for example, in marijuana use, which is a substance use problem. So what we see is our young people are being affected, just like you and I, and most people who've lived through the pandemic are being affected. So we have to provide those prevention services that promote resilience and that allow young people to get the support they need so that they can deal with the stress, distress, and the trauma related to the environment.
So what are some of the things that you actually
We have a whole variety, for example, of prevention services that we offer. We have some trauma-informed services that we offered to address those issues with young people. And those happen, as I said, for everyone in the school. Also, our clinicians, like the ones that are here today, provide that one-on-one experience. And that's based upon the individual needs of that individual child.
Okay, we'll take another round. Mark, you haven't had a
Couple
chance
quick
to...
budget follow-ups. One on the nurses. How many schools don't have a full-time in-person nurse right now?
They should all have a full in-person nurse, so I want to...
I guess we're hearing here they don't, right?
Well, that's what I'm going to ask about. They should all have a full in-person nurse. Plus, they have other allied health professionals that have been assigned to them to support in their health and safety protocols related to COVID.
And then could I circle back to the substitute teachers?
Sure.
That you put in the budget. They're planning a rally this afternoon outside of your office. What does this do? What can you do in the short term? I guess if this is in your budget that's going forward for this pay increase, what can you do to address their issues in the short term this school year?
I think, we're already, yeah, Chancellor's going to clarify something I said wrongly.
Thank you, Mark. So I want to clarify that this budget allows us to take a salary increase for our hourly rate for substitutes, short-term and long-term, into fiscal 23 for next school year. But we have decided that implementation will take place actually beginning this school year. So effective this school year, substitutes will be receiving that additional increase in compensation. And this, again, is the mayor outlined, our second increase in substitute compensation this school year.
So when exactly this year would that take place?
I believe it will take place the next pay period that the substitutes are providing the service, but we will communicate that directly to them.
And then while I have you, a school but not budget related, can you update us on how the pre-K weekly testing for COVID and reentry has been going? How many students are complying with this, and how many are not coming back to school?
Yeah, the headline, Mark, is the majority of our families have been extremely supportive, and we're grateful when we send our test kits home on Friday that we have strong participation in our weekly testing protocol. So, for example, at 6 a.m. this morning, we had over 3,700 uploads into our database, and we had unconfirmed 17 potential positives that we will continue to evaluate. And we get a number of the uploads in the morning, and we do have some families that bring their children to school and need to get a test on site, but we haven't had a need to turn families away.
3,700 out of what's the universe there?
The universe is about 4,000.
Okay, I appreciate it. And Mayor Bowser, could I ask you one off-topic question? Kim Ford, have you been briefed on her resignation from Martha's Table? My question, your reaction to her allegations and her leaving, but also your comfort level now. Martha's Table manages a lot of DC-funded programs. We were just over there the other day announcing something for moms and families. So your comfort level in them going forward, and then your reaction to her resignation.
Well, I didn't know about it in advance, so I was surprised by it. I've had the occasion to talk to her one-on-one fairly recently, so I didn't anticipate that she would be leaving. Martha's Table, of course, is a venerated organization in the district. They do important work. Their recent move to Ward 8 has been transformative for their work, I believe, and I know that Kim was a big part of that successful transition. So I will be looking forward to the board talking to us about how they move forward with the district. I expect that they will move forward with the district and the very important programs that we've put in place continue to thrive. Yes. Yes, sir.
This is a mental health question once again, and
Okay.
it's connected to public safety.
Yep.
Given the conversation around youth carjackings and things of that nature, what's the potential for more interagency collaboration, to sort of prevent the problem? Just given the conversation a couple weeks ago about being more punitive and holding youth more accountable, how does the mental health situation fall into preventing and taking into account the external factors that lead to youth committing crimes?
Well, certainly every part of our system needs to be working. And part of my remarks, if you remember, was that everybody has to step up and do more in the space or in their lane. If it's mental health and mental health providers, you just heard one example of something that drives me crazy. Like, we put resources in place and they're not there in person. All right, I just heard that about this school. So imagine what we are doing across our system, whether it's supervising agencies, court social services, DYRS, pathways, you name it. We need to all be stepping up and showing up in person to provide these services. And that includes school. That's why we have been so dogged about making sure we're working with our teaching staff, our school leaders, our parents, our health and safety professionals, to make sure kids could be in school full time all the time. So when we're talking about some of these young people who are committing these carjackings, they should be in school. At the time they're committing the carjacking, they should be in school. And so we need every part of our system to work, to step up, just like Principal Takeva and all the professionals here in person providing services. The other thing I said is, when we have young people who are committing crimes, using guns, that we have to also show them love through how it is to act in society peacefully. And we have a lot of services to help rehabilitate children who haven't been able to follow the law too. So accountability is important.
What are you talking about?
What do you mean?
Well, we get to show them how to act peacefully. I mean, what?
This is what I mean, Sam. If a child is arrested and proven that they have committed a carjacking with a gun, we need that child to be in a situation where they can rehabilitate. We have one, New Beginnings, you know it. They can go to school, they can have all the mental health supports, they can be out of community while they work on the issues that got them there. We have other programs too, and the judge may decide that they shouldn't be in a secure setting at New Beginnings, but maybe they should be in some other environment. But if they are, then services have to be provided and they have to be held accountable to whatever plan that they are on.
There were only 24 kids in New Beginnings, and in some cases when you have these carjackings and arrests, that the Attorney General's office recommended holding them, but they were let go.
Some cases recommended holding, some cases not.
You're saying this, but is there any indication that it's going to happen? Because
It's up to us. It's up to all of us. Just like you asked me tough questions about the decisions that I make, we have to extend that tough questioning and accountability to every part of the system. Everybody has to step up in their lane and do as much as they can to make sure we're dealing with children who obviously need a lot of help. I know they are. Judges live in our communities, prosecutors live in our communities, mental health professionals, nurses. Everybody wants to be safe. And everybody wants to help kids. Nobody is saying we're throwing kids away. I don't believe in throwing anybody away. But what I am saying, if you're demonstrating that you're in so much trouble that you would put a gun in somebody's face to steal their car, we need to get to you before you really ruin your life and hurt someone. Yep. Okay.
Thank you. Hello, I'll take it. You got it? Okay. Hello, my name is Christopher Stewart. I am the librarian here at Columbia Heights Education Campus. Welcome, everyone.
Thank
to
you.
this
Thank
space.
you for hosting us.
Thank you. So this is what a full-time certified librarian looks like as far as in this space, in this beautiful space where we also have a peace, love, and meditation room. So when we talk about mental health and we talk about students, the library is such that hub, right, as Tavani mentioned, but also so many students where they can come and receive care and love, break up fights, restorative justice. So this is where they need to be. And having a librarian in every single school, in every ward, is what we want, what we desire, and we're so excited that you all will be considering that for 2022-2023. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you have anything to add, Chancellor?
It's in our budget.
Okay.
So we want to assure our school communities that we share that commitment as we go into the 22-23 school year. I had an opportunity to spend some time today in your space to have some mindfulness moment for myself. So I can assure you that it's definitely value in that for our students, and thank you so much for your service.
Okay, I'll take a few more. Yes, sir.
Could someone just talk again about what was the previous increase for substitutes, and what was there was another increase?
Do we have a chart that shows, first, let me just start here by saying this. We are, with our substitutes, we've looked around the region as we tend to do when we're bookmarking our salaries. And we weren't in the right place at the beginning of the year with our substitutes. I didn't know that I focused on the amount, but we've made some efforts to increase that. And we feel like with this proposal, we're like with all of our teaching investments that we're going to be doing better than the region. But we have a chart we can share with you. Okay. Yep, go ahead.
Just sort of Democratic leaders, nationwide, they're sort of starting to rethink masking in schools. New Jersey's governor just said he's going to sort of end the state mandate. Is there any thought, I know it's maybe early days, but what's the sort of off-ramp for some of these pandemic protocols, or do you feel they're very much necessary still?
We will be advising and doing a deep dive with our team of exactly where we are with the virus and where we need to go with some of the interventions. We will, of course, as we've done throughout this pandemic, turn up and turn down as the virus dictates. I would not expect that schools would be the first place, however. Right, Principal Takeva? Okay.
You don't expect changes for this school year in terms
I
of
didn't say that.
Right.
I said that I don't think that they would be the first intervention to dial back down. Well, we're going to be coming out of the public health emergency. That will probably be the first thing. I can't say anything more right now, Mark. Right now, I think it ends on the 18th. I think, Mark, is that right, Mark? You looked at me. I thought it was the 18th, but you may be right. I'll double check that.
I got two technical questions on the budget. One
Okay.
is, this is the highest percentage increase that I've seen since I've been covering this, and we know
Me too.
there's a lot of, we know there's kind of big inflation happening in our country. Can you just quickly, someone talk about how you arrived at this number and how much, this was necessary to keep up with inflation?
Yes, and I'll turn to my team to talk about that. And if Executive Director wants to add anything, I want to give her that opportunity as well. So yes, we have inflation. We have a new model that focuses on equity, and there's some investments to make that happen. We've had a commitment to making sure we're stabilizing our schools, regardless of enrollment. So all of those things together, plus our very careful management of our fiscal situation, allows us to make these types of investments in school. And these investments pay off. Okay, when people see, and we've seen it, we only have to look in the last 10 years in the District of Columbia. When teachers know that they're being invested in, kids know that they're being invested in, communities know that they're being invested in, they respond by attending our schools. We are able to attract fantastic personnel that helps our children achieve. We're able to grow our programs like we've been able to do with pre-K. And so all of those things are important to the future of our city. So this is the type of investment that a mayor and everybody wants to make because it pays off.
One technical note, if I may. Yeah. I just have one very brief technical note to make, which is the 5.9% increase to the uniform per student funding formula, which goes to DCPS and all public charter schools, is not the same thing as what everyone's going to see as a percent increase in their budget, because this is the complicated algebra of public school funding. What we're talking about is the increase to the foundation weight, and then there's lots of money that gets multiplied on top of that. So if you are a student that requires special services, there's more money. If you are an English language learner, there's more. If you are designated as at risk, there's more. And so the overall increases to DCPS's budget actually far exceeds 5.9%, and the same is true for all the public charter schools.
In the weights yet, right?
Currently, we're not proposing changes in the weights. We are setting the foundation level as we always do, and then we'll see that carry through the overall formula to much larger increases to the overall budgets.
And I know financially, right, as you've laid out, you can hire a new mental health worker, DBH worker for every school. Do you think practically, realistically, are there enough people that are going to apply? We know that a lot of the investments that you've made, whether it be COVID directors, whether it be tutors, from what I understand, there just hasn't been the staff to hire them, even if there has been the funding.
Yes, we're doing a number of things to try to enhance our ability to get the appropriate clinicians per school. I think that everybody knows that around the country there really are not sufficient numbers of LICSWs to serve in various capacities. Within school-based behavioral health, one of the things we've done to increase our ability to get clinicians is we have put supervisors and paid for supervisors out of our budget with LICSWs, the W licensure, who can then actually supervise LGs, which are learning graduates who are master's level clinicians who are coming in, who still need to gather the hours required to be LICSWs. We are also working very closely in terms of getting more people in our pipeline through our internship programs and so forth. And so I think we are doing a lot of the same things that people around the country are doing. But our hope is that we will have sufficient people to meet our needs through some of the innovations that we've put in place.
Mayor Bowser, thank you for the opportunity to just share a few words, and thank you for this unprecedented investment for this year, but also the consistent investment that you have made to public education. In terms of your question around the increase to the formula, I know that that will be welcomed by our charter schools. As you mentioned, there are increased costs. And while there has been also unprecedented investment in federal funding, this is really an expression of local investment and the ongoing costs that our schools will have. So I am looking forward to talking to charter leaders about how they plan to use these resources. But much like the chancellor said, we are serving the same children, and they have all of the same challenges and beautiful opportunities that DCPS children do. So thank you.
Okay, last question. Okay, second to last question. You have the last one.
I have a similar question about staffing. Where does hiring for COVID coordinators stand? How many have been hired and how many are actually currently in schools?
So as of last week, we had approximately 20 of each in our schools, and we had 100 people that were in the hiring pipeline approximately for both categories. So as people are screened through, we get them out to schools, and as you know, we have additional layers through the screening process that's been legislated, so that does take a little bit more time than in the past, but schools have been very receptive to that support. And I think one of the supports that we don't often talk about, that Principal Takeva and I were discussing today, is that we continue to distribute resources through our central services team to schools as needed. But we haven't seen the same need given the decreases in decline in COVID cases that we've seen most recently.
Okay, last question.
Tangibly, what does it mean to hold agencies accountable? You know, making sure that all hands are deck, all trains are running on time, all resources are where they need to be. How does that look tangibly?
You're talking about across the government?
Across the government, but specifically as it relates to making sure that students have resources and that violence prevention and mental health resources are in place in general.
Well, we have a system of management that I'm sure you are aware that the chancellor and the deputy mayor follow their commitments throughout the year. And certainly on any kind of special investments, they report to me on our progress with that. So that's how it works. The Council of the District of Columbia also has an oversight responsibility for every public education dollar, and we participate in their hearings throughout the year. Okay, thank you, everybody.
We now return to our previously scheduled program, already in progress.